Alright, aqui estamos nós novamente, muito bem-vindo à aula número 77 da comunidade Lab. Aula ao vivo, nós estamos dando continuidade no livro The Mountain is You, e hoje nós vamos fazer uma pequena alteração, a leitura vai ser mais dinâmica, lembrando que o intuito é explorar além do inglês com esse material de inglês. So, let's go! Estamos na página 62 e o título é Identifying Your Subconscious Commitments. Part of the reason we often experience intense inner conflict or self-sabotage is because of something called a core commitment, which is essentially your primary objective or intention for your life. Your subconscious commitments are basically what you want more than anything else, and you often aren't even aware of them. You can identify your core commitments by looking at the things that you struggle with most and the things you are most driven by. If you can peel back the layers of your motivations towards each, you'll find a root cause. When you find the same root cause for everything, you found a core commitment. People only seem irrational and unpredictable until you understand what they are fundamentally committed to. For example, if someone has a core commitment to feel free, you may find themselves sabotaging work opportunities in order to achieve that. If someone's core commitment is to feel wanted, they could find themselves in a series of relationships in which they have intense connections but refuse to make commitments out of fear that the spark will fade. If someone's core commitment is to be in control of their lives, they might have irrational anxiety about things that represent a loss of control. If someone's core commitment is to be loved by others, they might pretend to be helpless in certain areas of life because if they don't need others, they might be left by them. But the most important thing to understand is that your core commitments are actually a cover up for core needs. Your core need is the opposite of your core commitment. Your core need is also another way to identify your purpose. For example, if your subconscious core commitment is to be in control, your core need is trust. If your subconscious core commitment is to be needed, your core need is to know you are wanted. If your subconscious core commitment is to be loved by others, your need is self love. The less that you feel your core need, the louder your core commitment symptoms will be. If you're a person who needs trust and is therefore committed to staying in control, the less that you believe you are supported, the more your negative coping mechanisms are going to flare up. Perhaps this could happen if the form of disruptive eating patterns, isolating yourself, or hyperfixation on physical appearance. If you're committed to freedom and therefore need a sense of autonomy, the less that you build a life on your own terms, the more you're going to sabotage opportunities and feel drained and exhausted when you should feel happy. The more you lean into fulfilling your core needs, the more your commitment symptoms will disappear. Once you understand what a person really wants, you will be able to explain the intricacies of their habits and behaviors. You'll be able to predict down to the detail what they will do in any given situation. More importantly, once you start asking yourself what you really want, you'll be able to stop battling the symptoms and start addressing the only issue that has ever really existed in your life, which is living out of alignment with your core needs and therefore your core purpose. Confronting repressed emotions and taking actions. Very quickly, então bem rapidinho sobre essa primeira parte. Você tem uma necessidade essencial. Quanto antes você conseguir identificar essa necessidade essencial que você tem, mais rápido vai ser para você conseguir entender os compromissos subconscientes que você tem. So let's write it down. Subconscious need and commitment. Ok. Então, quando você consegue entender a sua necessidade ali de forma subconsciente, você vai conseguir entender mais. Page. Confronting repressed emotions and taking action. There is a difference between understanding why we self sabotage and the act of no longer self sabotage. This means that once we understand the root and purpose of that behavior, we adjust it, we adapt. Overcoming self sabotage is not just a matter of understanding why you're holding yourself back. It is being able to take actions in the direction that you want and need to, even if it is initially uncomfortable or triggering. This is a very important part of the process because you are essentially going to be confronting the exact emotions you have been trying to avoid. When you stop engaging in self sabotaging behaviors, repressed emotions that you weren't even aware of will start to come up. And you might feel even worse than you did before. The thing about overcoming self sabotage is that we don't often need to be told what to do. We know what we want to do and we know what we need to do. It is simply that we're being held back by our fears, by our fear of feeling. To begin to unravel this emotional holding pattern, we can work through the following to find more ease and space and freedom while we change our lives. So, confronting repressed emotions and taking action. Então, basicamente, se a gente não confronta, não tenta passar pelas emoções aqui específicas, igual está sendo mencionado nessa parte, a gente vai acabar encontrando com elas sem querer. E aí fala que a gente sabe o que a gente quer e o que a gente precisa de fazer. A gente quer alinhar isso. Section 64. The most common emotions that arise while you're breaking self-sabotaging behaviors. Então, essas emoções mais comuns que aparecem quando a gente está quebrando esses comportamentos de self-sabotage. The first feeling you are likely to confront is resistance. This is that generalized sense of being stuck or your body feeling so tense that it's almost hard, as though you're hitting a wall. This feeling is usually a masking emotion that is preventing you from actually being aware of the sensations beneath it, which are more acute. When you start to feel resistance, you don't want to just push through it. In fact, trying to do that means you will keep hitting the same wall that you were up against already. You're going to strengthen the self sabotaging behavior because you aren't really solving the problem by just trying to override it. Instead, start asking the right questions. Why do I feel this way? What is this feeling trying to tell me about the actions I'm trying to take? Is there something I need to learn here? What do I need to do to honor my needs right now? Then you have you have to reconnect to your inspiration or your vision of life. Get clear on why you want to take this action and make a change. When your motivation is the fact that you want to live a different and better existence, you're going to find that a lot of the resistance fades because you're being pushed by a vision that's greater than your fear. In other cases, you might run into other emotions such as anger, sadness, or inadequacy. When those feelings come up, it's important to make space for them. This means to allow them to rise up in your body and observe them. Watch where they make you uh, tense up or conflict. Feel what they want you to feel. There is nothing worse than the fear of feeling the emotion, as the experience itself is ultimately just often some physical tension around which we've crafted a story. Remember that a lot of these feelings may very well have a root in something related to the self sabotaging behavior. If you are angry about how one of your parents treated you, it probably won't come as a surprise that the core feeling of why you're sabotaging your relationship is anger and mistrust. This feeling associated with self sabotage are not usually random. In fact, they can lead us to deeper insights about what we really need and what problems within us are still unresolved. To fully release those feelings, once you are aware of them, try writing yourself a letter. Write something to you, to your younger self, or from the perspective of the future self. Write down a mantra or a manifesto. Remind yourself that you love yourself too much to settle for less, or that it is okay to be angry in unfair or frustrating circumstances. Give yourself space to experience the depth of your emotions so that they do not control your behaviors. All right. So this one is talking about uh, the emotions that usually arise, as emoções que conseguem, que costumam aparecer quando a gente está lidando com self-sabotage. All right. Page 65. Now let's go down to page 67. Disconnecting action and feeling. So disconnecting actions and feeling. All right. There we go. All right. Disconnecting action and feeling. Ou seja, desconectar, separando ação e sentimento. The final and most important lesson to overcome self sabotage is to learn to disconnect action from feeling. We're not held back in life because we're so incapable of making changes. We're held back because we don't feel like making changes, and so we don't. The truth is that you can behave a vision of what you want, know that it's undoubtedly right for you, and simply not live, not feel like taking the action, taking the action required to pursue the path. Em outras palavras, e trazendo para a ideia do português, required to pursue a path. Alright. Então, nesse aqui, eu tô falando que a. Que a verdade é que você pode ter a visão que você quiser, saber que ela é de fato certa para você. Mas se você não fizer nada, nada vai acontecer. Se você não tiver as pegadas, os passos. Okay. So this is because our feelings are essentially wired as comfort systems. They produce a good feeling when we are doing what we have always done. Staying in familiarity. This to our bodies registers as safety. In other cases, the accomplishments or changes that we are very happy about are those that we view that we also perceive to offer us a greater measure of safety. The achievement potentially puts you at risk in any way or exposes you to similar unfamiliar. We aren't going to be happy about it initially, even if it's a net positive for our lives. Então, essa é uma coisa que nós humanos fazemos. Nós tentamos nos proteger e nós fazemos o que nós sentimos bem fazendo. E normalmente a gente se sente bem fazendo o que a gente tem familiaridade, o que a gente é bom já fazendo. E a possibilidade de a gente fazer isso é baixíssima. Isso. Ok. E a possibilidade da gente querer fazer o que é confortável é uma possibilidade grande. This is because our feelings are essentially wired as comfort systems. That's the one we just read. Então, mesmo se for algo positivo para a nossa vida, a gente tem a tendência de alguma forma, deixar de lado, a gente tentar anular, deixar para lá, cancelar em algum aspecto. All right. Next, we have the next paragraph. One second. All right. However, we can actually train ourselves to prefer behaviors that are good for us. This is how we restructure our comfort zone. We begin to crave what we repeatedly do, but the first few times we do it, we often feel uncomfortable. The trick is being able to the initial uh, override that initial hesitation. So we're guiding our lives with logic and reason, not emotional. This is amazing. Então a gente está guiando a vida com lógica e razão, não com emoção. Ok. All right. So let's continue. Most importantly, you may feel as though you cannot take actions when you most certainly can. You simply do not feel willing because you are not used to it. By using logic and vision to guide ourselves, we're able to identify a difference and better life experience. When we imagine this, we feel peaceful and inspired to rise up to meet this version of our lives. We must overcome our resistance and discomfort. We will not feel happy initially, no matter how right for us those actions are. It is essential that you learn to take action before you feel like doing it. Taking action builds momentum and create motivation. These feelings will not come to us spontaneously. You have to generate them. You have to inspire yourself. You have to move. You have to simply begin and allow your life, inner energy to be reorient itself to prefer the behaviors that are going to move your life forward, not those that will, not those that are keeping you held back. Then we get to part three. All right, so feelings and actions. That's the idea. This one. Feelings and actions. Muito bom, capítulo 2. Alright, now nós estamos indo para o capítulo 3 do livro, página 70. Let's go, let's do it. Guys, give me 1 second. Alright, we're back live. Chapter 3, page. A página que nós estamos aqui é qual? 70. 71. So let's continue. Então vamos continuar. Chapter 3. Your triggers are the guides to your freedom. Interessante o título do capítulo 3. Então, aquelas coisas que te dão gatilho, que te deixam assim, e aí? Triggers you. São o que guiam, ou são as coisas que te guiam para a sua liberdade. Now that you've begun to identify your self-sabotaging behaviors, you can use them to uncover deeper and more important truths about who you are as a person and what you really want and need out of life. This is an important part of the process because overcoming our self defeating habits is not just about knowing what they are or why we engage in them. It is also about better understanding what our inherent needs are, what we really desire, and how we can use this as a pivot point to begin building a life that's aligned with who we really are and what we are here to do. Our triggers do not actually exist just to show us we're storing unresolved pain. In fact, they show us something much deeper. Each negative emotion we experience come with a message, one that we don't know yet how to interpret. This is when a single challenge begins to become a chronic issue. Unable to honor and use the guidance of the emotion, we shut the feeling down, store it in our bodies, and try to avoid anything that might bring it up again. This is when we become sensitive to the world around us because there are a lot of repressed feelings mounting. On the surface, it seems as though the thing that triggers our emotion or emotional response is the problem. It is not. The problem is that we do not know what to do with how we feel and therefore do not have all the emotional processing skills that we need. When we can identify why something is triggering us, we can use the experience as a catalyst for a release in positive life change. Ideia geral: as coisas que dão meio que engatilham, não gatilham, ativam alguma coisa em nós, elas não são os problemas. Na verdade, elas mostram que existe um problema. E aí, quando a gente tenta resolver isso, a gente, na verdade, não está resolvendo o problema. Só que se a gente entende que, na verdade, existe um problema para resolver, aí a possibilidade de a gente trabalhar no problema de verdade é maior. Só que a gente tem que entender o que o problema de fato é. Alright. How to interpret negative emotions. Então, como interpretar, como perceber, como lidar com emoções negativas. That's also a good one. Esse aqui também é uma boa. Page 72. Though everyone's particular triggers are unique to them, it helps to better understand the function of some of the feelings that we often condemn. Some of the emotions that are most strongly connected with self sabotaging behaviors are actually important for us to better understand. It's not only about simply getting over them, it is about listening to what they are trying to tell us about our experience. Anger. Anger é a raiva. Anger. Agora a gente vai ter um subtítulo aqui sobre anger. All right. All right, page 73. Anger is a beautiful, transformative emotion. It is mischaracterized by its shadow side, aggression, and therefore we try to resist it. It is healthy to be angry, and anger can also show us important aspects of who we are and what we care about. For example, anger shows us where our boundaries are. Anger also helps us identify what we find to be unjust. Ultimately, anger is trying to mobilize us to initiate action. Anger is transformative, and it is often the peak stage we reach before we truly change our lives. This is because anger is not intended to be projected onto someone else. Rather, it's an influx of motivation that helps us change what we need to change within our lives. When we do not see it as such, we tend to bury it and ever resolving the real issue at hand. This is when anger starts to cross over into aggression. When we take that energy out on those around us and expose us and exposed to using it as an impetuous to change ourselves. Instead of being afraid of anger, we can instead use it to help us see our limits and priorities more clearly. We can also use it to help us make big, important changes, both for ourselves and the world around us. Sadness. Anger foi da raiva. Sadness, da tristeza. Right, so now sadness. Page 74, I think. Pretty sure. Yeah, page 74, sadness. Sadness is the normal and correct response to the loss of something you very much love. This is an emotion that often comes up with the aftermath of a disappointment. This could be the loss of a relationship, a job, or just a general idea of what you thought your life would be. Sadness only becomes problematic when we do not allow ourselves to go through the natural phases of grief. Sadness does not release itself all at once. In fact, we often find that it happens in waves, some of which strikes us at unexpected times. We do not ever need to feel embarrassed or wrong for needing to cry, feel down, or miss what we no longer have. In fact, crying at appropriate times is one of the biggest signs of mental strength, as people who are struggling often find it difficult to release their feelings and be vulnerable. Interesting. Então, sobre a tristeza, ela é um sentimento que acontece quando a gente perde alguma coisa. Ele fala que it's okay to cry and to have difficult moments. It's part of process. It's part of life. Next, guilt. Guilt is another one. Just copy. All right. So that is page 75. Guilt. Guilt tends to affect us more for what we didn't do than what we did. In fact, people who struggle the most with guilt are the people who are not actually guilty of something terrible. People who commit heinous acts tend to not feel much remorse. The fact that you feel bad that you couldn't have done wrong by someone is a good sign in itself. However, guilt requires us to look deep at what behaviors, if any, we feel badly about, as well as what we may have done that was not in our best interest. If we have treated others unfairly, we must be able to admit, apologize, and correct that behavior. However, if the feeling of guilt is more generalized and not specifically relating to any one incident, we need to look closely at who or what made us always feel as though we're wrong or inconveniencing others. Guilt is often an emotion we carry from childhood and then project onto current circumstances when we felt as though we were burdened to those around us. All right. Então, basicamente, a guilt, sentir culpa em si sozinho, assim, a sentimento, ele não é uma coisa negativa, até positivo, porque sabe que alguma coisa não foi correto, não foi do jeito que deveria. Estranho seria se a gente não tivesse, né? É o que fala ali, se não tivesse preocupação, aí que é o problema. 76. Embarrassment. Embarrassment é de vergonha, de ficar numa situação envergonhada. Embarrassment, what we feel when we know that we did not behave in a way that we are proud of. Então, é um sentimento de quando a gente sabe que o nosso comportamento ele não foi algo que nós nos orgulharíamos. Então, esse seria o sentimento do embarrassment. Other people can never make us feel as embarrassed as we make ourselves feel. When you are truly and completely confident that you are doing the best you can with what you have in front of you. You stop feeling embarrassed at all the time. Sure, Others can make you feel bad with their comments or ideas. But even their worst judgments tend to be neutralized when we accept ourselves and feel proud of who we are. Shame is the shadow side of embarrassment. This is when the occasional feeling of being embarrassed turns into a way for us to completely condemn ourselves as human beings and begin to see ourselves as worthless and invalid. When we do not process the feeling of embarrassment, it tends to turn into something far darker. Então, quando a gente não processa esse sentimento, ele tende a se tornar uma coisa bem mais cabulosa. Jealousy. Do you know what jealousy is? Sabe o que é jealousy? Jealousy. Here we go. Page 6. Jealousy is a cover up emotion. It presents as anger or judgment when in reality it is sadness and self dissatisfaction. If you want to know what you truly want out of your life, look at what look at the people who you are jealous of. No, you may not want exactly what they have, but the feeling that you are experiencing is anger that they are allowing themselves to pursue it while you're not. When we use our jealousy to judge other people's accomplishments, we are sighting into its shadow function. When we use our jealousy to show us that we would like to accomplish, we begin to reorganize the self sabotaging behavior and get ready to commit to what we actually desire. You can think of it this way: when we see someone who had something we really want, but we're surprised, but we are suppressing our willingness to pursue it, we must also condemn it in them so we can justify our own course of action. Instead of this, we can see what we would also like to create. So that one was about jealousy. Next topic will be resentment, page 77. Page 77. Resentment. Just copy it. There we go. 1 second. When we resent people, it is often because they did not live up to the expectation of them that we had in our minds. Resentment in some ways is like a projected regret. Instead of trying to show us what we should change, it seems to have it seems to want to tell us what other people should change. However, other people are under no obligation to live up to our idea of them. In fact, Our only problem is that we have an unrealistic expectation that someone was meant to be exactly what we think they should, or love us exactly as we imagined they would. When we're faced with resentment, what we instead must do is reinvent as having wronged us. Other people are not here to love us perfectly. They're here to teach us lessons to show us to love them and ourselves better. When we release the idea we have about who they should be, we can see them for who they are and the role they are meant to play in our lives. Instead of focusing on how they should change, we can focus instead on what we can learn. Nice. See how many more we have to finish the chapter. Wow. Yeah, I guess they're not finishing up chapter 3 today. We're definitely not. Definitely we can't. So we're on page 77. Então a gente está aqui na página 77. O capítulo vai até a página 101, esse próximo capítulo, que a gente está nele, né? Então nós vamos continuar na semana que vem, na página. Olha, Resentment, na página 77. Lembrando que o intuito dessa aula é compartilhar coisas que vão além do inglês, que podem te ajudar na sua vida de forma geral. Se você tiver qualquer dúvida, qualquer dica, sugestão, please let us know. Thank you so much. Take care and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.